Hi, Mike Masters from GE Aviation's Customer Training Services in Cincinnati. And in this GE90 Maintenance Minute, we're going to take a look at the inspection procedure of the turbine center frame oil supply tube. There's a sort of a multifaceted inspection we may have to do. It's not something that's regularly scheduled. It's only going to be driven by the engine reaching an analytics threshold per the trending data. The inspection itself really isn't that difficult. It's Service Bulletin 72-627. But there are some steps along the way that have caused some problems in the field, even in-flight shutdowns due to oil loss, things of that nature. So we want to detail some of the finer points of this inspection. So we'll begin by simply removing the spray shield around the supply tube. And you want to make sure you physically remove the P-clamp that secures the spray shield together. We don't want to leave it there. We may accidentally install a second one thinking this one's missing or something like that, then cause a chafing issue. Down below, you can see the location of the P-clamp that's securing the bracket to another oil tube. We're going to remove that first. And now we'll remove the other two bolts and nuts securing the bracket into position. And now with our bolts and nuts removed, we're able to remove the bracket. This is absolutely key as far as a human factors maintenance error perspective here. There is a tendency in the field to want to remove these two bolts and nuts and then simply loosen the P-clamp securing the bottom of the bracket to a tube and then slide it out of the way. The problem is when we do that, when we simply slide this bracket down that other oil tube and out of the way, it disappears from view, and it does make it possible to forget to reinstall it. With the bracket removed, we can now remove this outer sleeve. Please pull it back a bit. And this is where the actual inspection is going to take place. Now with our outer retaining sleeve pulled out of the way, we could use our borescope to inspect the condition of the piston ring. What we're looking for really is the presence of the piston ring. To make sure it is present in its location, it's not missing or it hasn't been displaced out of the piston ring groove. If the piston ring is present, it looks like this. If the piston ring is missing, it looks like this. It is possible that the piston ring can be present, but again, dislodged out of the piston ring groove, and that looks like this. So if the piston ring has been dislodged or found to be missing, that's going to drive us to do the eddy current inspection portion of the service bulletin. For the purposes of this video, we have found our piston seal ring to be missing. So we're going to go through the steps that we would go through on the line to replace it. Okay, in order to safely remove all of the hardware that we're going to need to remove to get access to our piston ring groove, we're going to have to temporarily reinstall this bracket that was removed early on. This is the same bracket that you want to make sure we completely remove it during this inspection process. We do not want to remove these two bolts and then loosen the P-clamp that secures it to the turbine rear frame tube underneath and slide it out of the way. And again, I know I've mentioned it before, very important. When we do that, when we slide this bracket out of the way, instead of properly removing it, it completely disappears behind other tubing and other hardware. And sometimes we forget to reinstall it, and eventually it chafes holes in the oil supply tube. We have an oil loss event, in-flight shutdown, diversion, what have you. So always completely remove this bracket. But for now, we're going to temporarily reinstall it with the nuts and bolts. And with our bracket reinstalled and torqued, we can now disconnect the B-nut to the oil supply tube. Just disconnecting the B-nut itself is not going to give us enough movement of the tube to do what we need to do. Removing P-clamps that are supporting the tube here here, and here as well. Completely remove those P-clamps. Now with our tube disconnected and the P-clamps securing it in the area have been removed, give us a little wiggle room here, if you will. Now we can remove that support bracket that we temporarily reinstalled a couple steps ago. So now we're going to be removing this entire fitting from the turbine center frame. The service bulletin is referring to that as the adapter. So one side of the adapter has our oil supply tube coming into it. On the top side is a cooling air manifold that we're going to need to disconnect. So now it's onto the 3 bolts that attach the adapter to the turbine center frame. Got the last of the 4 bolts out. I said 3 bolts before, my mistake. Actually 4 bolts. Never made a mistake, happened to me once. All right, so we're going to just kind of wiggle, shake. There we are. Okay, and we are ready to push our new piston ring seal into position. Okay, and in closing things up here, I reinstalled the adapter and the pneumatic duct with the E-seal in between, reinstalled the bracket with both the 2 upper bolts and the P-clamp that connects it to the supply tube going to C-sump as well. Now it's time to install the rest of our P-clamps to support. But before I do, I'm going to just start this B-nut by hand. Just get a few threads on it. That's the beginning process of getting the tube properly aligned and not storing any stresses in it when we tighten down the P-clamps. Okay, our P-clamps more or less in position here. One of the things that's changing in the service bulletin right now as we speak is instead of lubricating these P-clamp bolts with the graphite, as originally called out, we're now going to use a little bit of engine oil. Here's the bracket installation as seen from below. You can see one of the 2 bolts here that are securing it to the adapter. And here is the P-clamp securing the lower part of that bracket to the tube supplying oil to the 5R bearing and the C-sump. Again, very important, always remember to completely remove that bracket, completely remove the P-clamps. That way we're sure that everything is in proper position when we go back together. And of course we'll install our last 2 P-clamps here and here. Okay, and that's it for the turbine center frame oil supply tube inspection. Hope you enjoyed the Maintenance Minute, and I'll see you next time.